Unbiased reveal channel. All right, buckle up, everyone. Today, we're diving headfirst into the aftermath of Apple's WWDC 2025. You know the one. Last year, huge promises, right? A super smart, AI-powered Siri, the big future of Apple intelligence. This year, well, let's just say Siri seems to be still finding itself. Maybe taking a gap year because those AI upgrades, mostly MIA. So yeah, lots of head scratching. Competitors are sprinting ahead. Apple's talking quality over speed again, and they showed off this new liquid glass look. We're going to unpack why everyone seems more focused on what didn't show up than what actually did.
Exactly. And our mission today is pretty straightforward. We've gathered all your questions, the juiciest bits from recent exec interviews, tech news, the forums, the usual suspects. We'll break down Apple's strategy or what we can piece together of it, look at what was actually announced, and wade through, well, the very strong opinions flying around. The goal, a clear, unbiased look at Cupertino's latest moves. And yeah, hopefully with enough humor so it doesn't feel like reading a software license agreement.
Oh, totally. It's like, remember getting hyped for a movie trailer, all the best scenes, the explosions, then you watch the movie, and half that stuff is just gone,
Yeah.
vanished. That's kind of the WWDC 2025 vibe for a lot of people, especially with Siri. It's become this whole saga, hasn't it? Promises, prototypes, and these really perplexing delays.
It really has. If we rewind to WWDC 2024, the stage was set for this massive Siri comeback. They pitched it as this fundamentally smarter, AI-driven assistant, all built on Apple intelligence. This wasn't just a tweak. It was framed as a foundational shift. Remember Craig Federighi and Greg Joswiak? They spent, like 40 minutes of their 100-minute keynote talking about Apple intelligence.
Just 30 minutes. That's practically an eternity in keynote time.
It really is. And within that, there was a very specific 8-minute segment dedicated purely to showing off what Siri could do in the future. It wasn't just about being a chatbot. The idea was this deep integration across the whole OS, learning about you, your data, but privately, on device. That was the big pitch.
40 minutes on the platform, 8 minutes specifically hyping up Siri's future. Wow, they really went for it. They pitched it as the grand future, the Apple intelligence to rule them all. That was the feeling, right? You'd think by now Siri would be running our lives, booking our holidays, maybe even walking the dog. The hype was immense. And then, WWDC 2025. The reality check. Oof.
And that's where the gap really opened up between what was promised, or at least demoed, and what actually landed in users' hands. Of those features shown for Siri last year, only about half, maybe 4 minutes worth of that original 8-minute demo actually shipped in the 2025 release.
Only 4 minutes, seriously. That's not a delay. That's like half the feature set just evaporated.
Yeah.
So, okay, what did we get? Because they still talked up some improvements, even if they felt a bit smaller scale. We got a new look for Siri, the UI. Which I guess is nice, like a new paint job on a car that still stalls sometimes. You can type to Siri now. That's genuinely useful. I'll give them that. Especially when you're trying not to shout, "Hey Siri," on a quiet train. And they said it's better at understanding commands, keeping context in conversations, knows more about Apple products, so less... Sorry, I didn't get that. Theoretically.
Theoretically, yes. These were presented as, incremental but important steps, improving the basic interaction. But the real heart of the issue, and where a lot of the disappointment comes from, is those unshipped features. And Apple execs were surprisingly candid about this quality conundrum. They flat out admitted that a couple of really significant features just weren't ready. They said they had a V1 working, a version 1 capable of doing the basics, the stuff we saw demoed in 2024. They really pushed back against the idea it was just smoke and mirrors.
Right, they were adamant it wasn't vaporware.
Exactly. They said they were filming real working software with a real large language model, with real semantic search for those 2024 demos. It was a genuine prototype.
Okay. It wasn't vaporware, they say. Just extremely aspirational software with an unacceptable error rate.
Yeah.
Come on, that sounds like damage control, doesn't it? It's the perfect fuel for that whole demoware narrative. The idea that Apple showed stuff just to create buzz, knowing full well it might not ship. But they claim they genuinely thought it would be ready, first by late last year, then by spring.
That's their line, yes. And their defense really boils down to Apple's obsessive focus on quality. That famous, or infamous, depending on your view, high bar. They essentially said they wouldn't ship something that didn't hit our quality standard, or had that unacceptable error rate. The big problem, apparently, wasn't just basic commands. It was when users went off the beaten path, asking more complex, open-ended things. And crucially, it was when Siri needed to access your personal on-device data. Think summarizing messages, using info from your photos, that kind of deeply personal stuff.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense, the really tricky privacy-sensitive stuff.
Precisely. The V1 architecture, while okay for demos, apparently struggled with the complexity and the need for near-perfect reliability when handling that kind of varied, unstructured private data. They needed a level of accuracy and privacy protection that V1 just couldn't guarantee at scale. So the decision was made to move to a V2 architecture, which implies, a pretty significant re-engineering effort, not just tweaking V1, building a more robust foundation.
A V2 architecture. Sounds serious, like needing to rebuild the foundations of a house, not just repaint the walls. And honestly, you don't want Siri going rogue with your private messages or photos. That's a nightmare scenario. So, okay, maybe the delay from that perspective is understandable. But then there's the marketing side of things, how it was all presented. Remember that Bella Ramsey ad? It was everywhere. It very clearly showed off an Apple Intelligence feature tied directly to Siri's new capabilities. That ad really cemented the idea that Siri was the star of the show.
It definitely contributed to that perception. But Apple's executives have pushed back on this too. They argue that the vast majority of their marketing and the WWDC presentation itself focused on Apple Intelligence as a whole system. They highlight the 20-plus other AI features that did ship things like better photo memories, writing tools in Mail, summarization in Notes, features powered by AI but not necessarily the new Siri. They point out that only about 4% of the 2024 keynote was actually about those specific now-delayed Siri features. Their argument is basically that users kind of conflated Apple Intelligence with just being a fancy new Siri chatbot, and that was never the full picture.
Conflated. That's an interesting word choice. So are they saying we all just misunderstood? It raises a really big question, doesn't it? Is the disappointment mainly about Apple breaking promises? Or was it a massive communication fumble where we all focused on the wrong thing because, let's face it, a super smart Siri is just more exciting than smarter photo albums. It feels like a bit of both, maybe. Like we expected the magic trick with the dove and got 20 other cool tricks, but we're still slightly miffed about the dove.
That's a good way to put it. And it leads us right into this whole battle of narratives around Apple's AI strategy. It's really polarizing. On one side, you have the optimistic view, Apple being Apple, the cautious approach.
Yes, the cautious approach. Code for, we're taking our sweet time and you'll like it because it's Apple.
It's their classic playbook, isn't it? Let everyone else rush out half-baked stuff, then swan in later with something polished. But does that still work in the age of AI? Well, their argument is pretty compelling from their perspective. They state quite bluntly that no one's doing automating capabilities on devices reliably really well right now. They keep stressing that this is new technology, especially the part about doing complex AI tasks reliably, privately, and on the device. That takes hard work, immense iteration. Their goal isn't just to be first, it's to be the first to get it right, to deliver the best experience with that Apple polish, quality over speed. And they frame AI not as a feature, but as this long-term transformational wave like the internet or mobile. Decades-long impact. So they see it as a marathon, not a sprint. Patience is key.
A marathon, not a sprint. Okay. So they're aiming for something that actually works without, accidentally emailing your boss your weekend plans or revealing state secrets stored in your notes. And this focus on integrated personal private AI is key to their narrative. It's not about a standalone chatbot you talk to. It's about weaving AI into the OS, making everything subtly better, often without you even noticing. No app called Apple Intelligence. Ooh, that's a stark contrast to Google or OpenAI just giving you a chat window. Apple wants it embedded, invisible almost. And crucially, private, on-device processing, minimizing data collection. That's a huge differentiator, potentially.
It absolutely is. And it plays directly into that second mover advantage theory, something Apple has mastered historically. Think about MP3 players before the iPod, smartphones before the iPhone, tablets before the iPad. Apple wasn't first, but they came in when the market was forming, learned from others' mistakes, and delivered a polished, integrated product that just clicked with consumers. Proponents of this view argue that current AI, while impressive, isn't quite ready for that Apple-level customer delight phase yet. There are still issues with reliability, hallucinations, privacy, and cloud models. They point to Apple's strong foundation in machine learning, their custom silicon, their research talent, and say, don't count them out. They have the pieces. They're just waiting for the right moment to assemble them perfectly.
Apple isn't just making a chatbot. They're trying to weave AI into the very fabric of your digital life, all while guarding your data like a dragon guarding its gold. It sounds great on paper. Strategic patience, quality first. But then there's the other side. The growing chorus saying Apple is simply lagging behind badly.
And that's the pessimistic view, the worst-case scenario that critics are increasingly vocal about. They argue Apple jumped hard on this bandwagon a year ago and completely fumbled it. The accusations are pretty harsh, overpromising, underdelivering. Some even use the term bait and switch, particularly regarding marketing the iPhone 16 line with AI features that still haven't fully materialized. That really rubs people the wrong way.
Bait and switch? Ouch. Yeah, that's strong. Selling hardware based on software promises that don't pan out. That's a dangerous game. And let's be real, the frustration with Siri isn't new. People have been complaining for years that it's, frankly, dumb. Garbage for years, some say. Maybe even gotten worse.
Yeah.
After a decade-plus head start, you'd think Siri should be as good, if not better than the competition. But ask anyone, and they'll likely tell you it is not right now. It often feels years behind Google Assistant or Alexa. Meanwhile, Google's dropping Gemini updates, showing off screen-aware context, multimodal understanding, crazy editing features, stuff that feels light years ahead of asking Siri to set a timer. We're even hearing anecdotes, people jumping ship to Android specifically for better AI integration. That's got to sting, Cupertino.
It certainly must. And this perceived stagnation fuels all sorts of speculation about what's happening internally at Apple. You hear whispers of internal strife, a lack of direction in the AI teams, suggestions that the whole division is a mess. Some commentators get really personal, suggesting Tim Cook has cooked Apple so badly on the AI front, implying a leadership failure. It also feeds into that perennial debate. Does Apple truly innovate anymore, or do they just polish and execute on others' ideas, relying on brand loyalty? The Vision Pro often gets lumped into this critique, too. That $3,500 face magnet, as some call it. Another example, critics say, of Apple maybe misreading the market or overreaching.
They say Apple doesn't innovate, they just execute well. But when the execution involves selling phones on features that aren't there, one has to wonder if they're just executing a disappearing act. And that really is the core conflict here, isn't it? Is Apple's caution a sign of strategic genius playing the long game for ultimate quality and privacy? Or is it just a symptom of being miles behind, completely outpaced in a field where things change, like weekly? Can you really wait for the dust to settle when the dust storm is more like a hurricane of constant disruption? It's a massive gamble.
It really is. But okay, let's step away from the AI vortex for a moment, because WWDC 2025 wasn't only about the Siri situation. They did announce other things, like the new UI, Liquid Glass.
Right, Liquid Glass. Sounds slick, maybe a bit like vodka, but Apple seemed super excited about it. They called it this new universal design language rolling out across all the operating systems. Lots of translucency, rounded corners, stuff adapting to what's behind it, making things feel open, they said.
Yeah, they were quite enthusiastic. They talked about its useful properties for UI design, making content feel like it owned the entire screen, highlighting how it transmits that background translucency but adapts for contrast, making things look super cool while staying readable. And technically, it's apparently quite demanding, enabled by the power of Apple Silicon handling real-time refraction and stuff, plus those HDR displays. The big idea seems to be consistency across the whole product line, heavily inspired by the look and feel of Vision OS, creating this unified, fluid aesthetic.
From ancient brick to liquid glass, Apple's latest design choice is computationally intensive, visually stunning, and apparently tastes like vodka.
But while Apple execs were patting themselves on the back, the online reaction was mixed. Some people seemed underwhelmed, calling it sloppy or just a new coat of paint. Some suggested it was maybe played up to fill time because the AI news wasn't what they'd hoped. A distraction tactic, perhaps. Still, getting that consistent dynamic look across iPhones, iPads, Macs, inspired by Vision OS, that's no small feat, even if it isn't a mind-reading AI. Agreed. And speaking of other platforms, iPadOS actually got some really significant love this year. I know you mentioned it earlier, but many felt it was sort of the unsung hero of the keynote.
Oh, definitely. As an iPad user who desperately wants it to be more like a laptop sometimes, those updates sounded fantastic. Vastly improved window management. Finally, being able to resize and overlap windows properly, like on a Mac, that's huge for productivity. It's been a major pain point for years. And the Files app overhaul, making it more like the macOS Finder with color-coded folders, proper previews. Yes, finally. My meticulously organized meme collection deserves better. These feel like genuine steps towards making the iPad a real work machine, not just a consumption device.
It really does feel like a real move in that direction, addressing years of user feedback, asking for more computer-like capabilities. And of course, this brings up the old grand convergence question again. Will iPadOS and macOS ever just merge? Apple seems to be inching towards more consistency, sharing features, but they've always strongly resisted a full merge. Remember that keynote where they basically shouted no in giant letters? The current strategy seems to be, let the iPad be an iPad, lean into its strengths, but borrow useful Mac stuff where it makes sense. A blend, not a complete fusion.
Right, make it more like a computer, but not exactly a computer. Keep the ecosystems distinct but related. Apple loves its walled gardens, even if the gates between them are getting wider. Okay, and then the elephant in the room, or maybe the expensive headset on the table.
Yeah.
The Vision Pro, last year's star, this year's ongoing experiment, still as divisive as ever.
Very much so. The dork helmet, as some critics like Amber Neely continue to call it. The narrative persists. It's expensive, it's heavy, it's not widely loved. We're hearing reports that even some early enterprise adopters are already moving on. The initial hype is certainly cooled.
Dork helmet. Ouch. And yeah, $3,500 is a lot of money for something that's heavy and maybe gives you neck strain. Is it just a product before its time? Did Apple make something the world just wasn't ready for, especially without a killer app or a more accessible price? The idea of wearing it all day for work still feels weirdly dystopian to me. Like, are we heading towards a future where we're all plugged into the matrix just to check email?
It's a valid concern. And some speculate that maybe a simpler Apple Glass type product, more like augmented reality glasses, might have landed better. Something less immersive, more integrated with the real world, offering information overlays, a more freeing experience rather than shutting you off completely like Vision Pro tends to do. Which brings us back to that core conflict. Is Vision Pro's struggle a sign of Apple misfiring? Or is it just them pushing boundaries, accepting that sometimes the market takes time to catch up? Are they building the future, or just a really expensive niche?
Yeah, it's the classic Apple gamble. It's not a flop, it's just visionary. But you have to wonder how long they'll keep pushing if mainstream adoption doesn't materialize.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, WWDC 2025, what's the big picture? It feels like we saw Apple walking this incredibly fine line, trying to push AI forward, but absolutely sticking to their guns on quality and privacy, even if it means delays, all while juggling massive user expectations and competitors who are moving at lightning speed. It's a company being super meticulous, but also facing serious heat for maybe being too meticulous in the fast-moving world of AI.
Absolutely. AI is clearly this huge foundational shift, like the internet or mobile before it. Apple's playing a different game, focusing on deep, private integration rather than just a flashy chatbot. But that slow and steady approach, can it really win? Especially when the landscape changes almost weekly, that's the massive question hanging over them right now. Totally. In the age of instant gratification, Apple reminds us, some things are worth the wait, even if it means everyone else gets to try them first. Maybe. Or maybe, when it comes to AI, Apple seems to be playing 4D chess while the rest of the world is just trying to get Siri to tell a decent joke. We'll see which one turns out to be true. So for you listening, what you think? Will Apple's cautious, quality-first AI strategy pay off in the long run? Or are they risking being left behind? What AI features are you actually waiting for, the ones that would really change how you use your devices every day? Does it even matter if it comes from Apple or someone else? And after all this, where does your brand loyalty lie? Still firmly with Apple, or are you starting to peek over the fence? Lots to think about. We'd love to hear your take.